Hey guys, how's it going?
Hello.
What's up, Jonas?
What's up, big dog?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Braden?
Good. Doing good. All right, we can go ahead and get started. I'm sure a couple more might trickle in. Let's see. Go ahead and do this real quick. Okay. So we kind of talked about it last time, but the agenda for today is learning component libraries, in particular Material UI. And so I'm going to go ahead and start out in the curriculum repository. You can access everything that we do in class inside of this OK Coders GitHub curriculum repository. Everything we did last time was here, day 4. And so all of the instructions and homework and stuff for everything will be posted in day 4. And today I'm going to be working on day 5, and so you can find it there. So I've already got day 5 open here. So here's kind of, I actually had ChatGPT build out all of this lesson plan as well as all of the homework that we're going to do tonight. So it's pretty sweet. I've been messing around with it a lot. So we'll see how that goes. But so far, I like kind of the guidelines that it gave us. So we're just going to kind of walk through this, and I'll kind of talk through some stuff, and then I'll let you guys ask any questions. Shouldn't be, I don't think, super hard for you guys necessarily. It's just going to be kind of a lot of new pieces that we're going to kind of need to get familiar with, things we haven't learned before. So your homework was really just to pull down and create a new project and try to play around with some components. So if everyone had a chance to do that, then the first step here might feel pretty familiar. We're just going to be doing that, just creating a project and setting up material so that we can use it locally. So in my terminal, I'm going to cd into today 5 LS. Okay, so I'm going to run a npx create react app, and I'm just going to call it day 5. We can call it something better, learning MUI. Now, while that's running, I'm going to go ahead and flip over to the browser. I've already gone to materials homepage here, but if you wanted to find that, you could just type MUI, and it's MUI.com. To get to their documentation, you just hover this, and then I always try to click this, but it actually doesn't do anything if you click it. You have to click this little chip right here. And then normally I will just go to components, look in there, but for now we're just going to follow this like installation guide. Step one is to just copy these packages and install that inside of our project. That should be done now. So I do ls cd into learning MUI ls, and then I'm inside of this React app that I created. I'm just going to paste in that command that we got from the browser to install all of those material packages. So this is installing material, emotion React, and emotion styled. We can talk about what these are after, but really this is just the base package right here. Okay, so that was step one. We've now made a project and installed it. We can go over is like kind of the benefits of using a component library and MUI in particular a little bit. I kind of talked about at the end of last class, but I think you guys have kind of picked up that there's a lot of like robustness when it comes to writing styles. Like you have to manually style a lot of things, especially things like an input. You don't want to have to use the same input component. Like you want your, like if you have like 7 pages that maybe 3 of them have inputs, you don't want to sometimes have an input look different and have to like copy the styles over, or just like make a component just to do an input, which is kind of what Material has already done. Is they've already wrote an input that looks the same and you can just import and use it. And so they've just made a bunch of reusable components that you could write yourself and style yourself, but it's just, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of these things that are out there and kind of have all the functionality that you'll probably need. And also Material is probably the most popular one. And so that's kind of why I think it makes sense to gravitate towards it, is that if you're looking for a job, it looks pretty good to say that I know Material, because a lot of people recognize that as like, okay, like if you get that, you could probably understand if they use something else or anything like that. But it's recognizable to employers and commonly used. Okay, so kind of talked about the documentation, but generally, after the installation and stuff, you guys are kind of supposed to read through this usage a little bit, but this is really it. Like you just install it and then you can import components from the folders themselves and then just use them. Capital B button instead of lowercase b button. That way it can differentiate the imported component from a element. And so now let's just kind of walk through what some of the components are. And so if you hit this little drop down here, I can close this getting started. These are like the base components that they have that you can just import and use. And so let's talk about some of the common ones. And so that's going to be this part, basic usage of MUI components. And so I'm inside of the project folder here. I'm going to go ahead and run npm run start, so I can spin up the project. We don't like Chrome, so we'll get rid of that. Come over here, do the same. Okay, so now we've got our React app, and we've got this folder that we created. So we can come inside of here, app.js, delete all of this header stuff. And let's say just, we could do what they did in their demonstration there. If we just say button, we're going to say import button. Which generally seems to know. One other thing is like, if I wanted to use a button and I wanted to use a card, and then I wanted to use a text field, like I have 3 imports here now, and I'm importing them directly from those, they're like subfolders. You can actually just group them all together if you use a name import and do it from just at Material Core. So if I wanted to do a button and a card and big C card and a text field, then you could do those all together in just this one import. Let's get rid of this. Oops. So I imported a button here. And I could say click. Okay, and then this has a lot of the base props that HTML base buttons have. So something like on click, do something. And so we could just say const function or oops, const do something equals this function. It says nice. Thank you, ChatGPT, or not ChatGPT, the other one, Copilot. Okay, so I just have a function. Whenever it's clicked, it's going to console.log do something. And so this is just a regular button. It should just work normal, right? And then we have a error, obviously. What's the deal? Package JSON. We have movie material. What's your deal here? Cannot resolve material UI core. Let's run a npm install. Set this up to date. Let's just run.
Your
Let's start
import
again.
line might be wrong, at least based on what I've used. If you check the
Yep.
chat is working for me. I'm not sure if that's if they both work or what.
This one.
Yeah, that one. So like I'm doing it from @MUI/material rather than
Oh yeah.
material
Yeah.
UI.
Yep.
Okay. Let me see.
@MUI probably, but you can check and see if that works.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I guess that's just what Copilot gave to me. I didn't really know. I'll just kill it. So I've got a button, and if I open my console to see the result here, every time you click it, I'm clicked. And so you see it's got some extra styles here. Whenever you hover it, it has this background color. And then whenever you click it, it does this like ripple. And also it has blue text and it's pretty big. So this is just the default. Let me make sure I'm on. Not that big, I've just zoomed in. So it has capital text, and all of those are things that Material is adding just from this base button. Get rid of that. Sweet. Okay, so let's add a couple more here just to kind of show them off and like what props exist around. So if I come down to here and I wanted to say, okay, like what can I do to this button? You can go to this button page, and so it's got this variant prop. So you can pass in a variant, and it should take only text contained or outlined. And so if I flip to here, I can give this prop and say variant equals contained. Now I go back to my UI, and now it has a blue background all the time. So that is the contained variant of a button. And then the other one, so the default was text, and then we also have outlined that we can pass. And so now it just has this border and a white background. Sweet. So that's that prop. And this is very common, the variant, that's why we're kind of highlighting that one. Disabled also is a base HTML value that you can pass, but they have special styles on their buttons. So it grays out, no longer has a hover effect. It doesn't have a pointer cursor anymore. It just has the regular arrow. So we can disable that. Now you can click it again. And we also have handling clicks, blah, 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 blah. This is the regular stuff. Okay, and then here we also have color. And so like if you wanted to just follow the base styles and not try too hard on every button, really all you need is variant and color for the most part. And so color, you can see I've got options here. Primary is going to be kind of like your default here. And then if we go back over here and I wanted to say success, you probably think that would give you something green border. And if I change this to be contained again, contained, it's got this green. And so then you can just kind of go through all of those. You got danger or error, one of the two. Yeah, probably not danger, error. There you go. So now it's red. And so it's like, this is like, are you sure you want to delete your account? You know, big scary red button, right? And so now you don't need to like manually say background color red on a button. You just say capital B button contained color error. And so that could be like everywhere you need this like big red confirmation button. Now you have this access, and it's literally like 4 words. Sweet. So let's look at the next bit. So that's kind of the customization aspect of it. And the main props on like the button specifically. We'll kind of look at a few components and like the props that I generally use a lot. But a lot of it is just kind of, I need it to do this, I need it to look like this, and kind of just digging through the documentation, and just kind of figuring out like what props does it take, and does that fit your use case. We talk about this stuff down here, but one of the really big things that most MUI components have is actually this component prop. I think they'll have some documentation around it. Supported components. Let's scroll down to the bottom. Yeah, sweet. So pretty much every component has access to this SX prop. And this is what you can use instead of saying like style and passing in the style object. You can pass in this SX object, and it's just like, it's kind of same, but it's a little bit smarter. And so you can pass all of the same HTML stuff just like this as style. But you see here it says success.main. And this is accessing theme values. And so this is things that like success.main is like a success object that Material has access to in its color palette. And then main is a property. There's a light, a main, and a dark color for each of the palette colors. And so if you pass color.main or success.main to the color prop on a style object, it would probably give you an error because it's not a valid CSS color. But in this, it's just computing what that value is set according to the theme. And so you could do that with our own button also. We could say SX, and we could say like, hey, I need it to actually be bigger. So like you can say font size is like 2 rem, and then you can say I want the width to be like 200 and the height to be 80. So like now these are like one-off styles. I don't recommend doing these a lot, but it's definitely there for you to do. It's kind of like using the style prop. You use it when needed. If it's going to be something small, you can kind of just throw it in. But generally there are like, if it's going to be just this one button that I'm styling, not a look for all of my buttons on my app, then it makes sense to kind of just do this one with the specialized styles there. So now I have this big specially styled button with this. So there's really no need to use the style tag anymore. Just use this SX all the time whenever you're using Material components. Just for clarification, you still can't use this here. It has to be something only on a Material component. Does it accept those props? Sorry, I know I'm going kind of fast. We just got a bunch of things to cover on Material.
So can you also use those? Could you the SX equals and then like you had the dot main or whatever, could you use that in a style sheet and style it that way as well? Or is it only through this SX?
Yeah, style sheet like in your CSS.
Yeah, so if you use like the .app.css, would you be able to style that button to have the color success.main in that style sheet, or is it only for the SX?
It's only for the SX, and because this is basically accessing. We're going to talk about theme a couple sections down, but this is only accessing the theme properties. And once we get to theme, we'll come back to exactly what SX can do, but that'll be towards halfway through the class. But no, you can only use these kind of properties in material specific things, so not inside of regular CSS. Okay, so I set color to success main, and now it is red and green and ugly. What if I do BG color? Sweet. So this so it set the color to the background color to that success.main property, but it still has the buttons colors from this error, and so the hover style still exists, and so that takes over whenever you hover. It takes the error variant or the error colors styles. Sweet. Okay. So that is just the button, and we'll kind of go over a few more. So I think some of the coolest ones are like the text field has like a lot of cool stuff. So look at that one. I cannot spell text field. See that automatically imported up there. Let's do that one. So these still will take what was that saying? I don't know. Oh, that was the dangerously. That's funny. So these still take the same properties, the value and on change that the regular just like input takes, but this one's kind of special that this one's really only for it's like for text. Really, it's not like an input like a radio button or those other kinds of inputs. They have those components also, and so you wouldn't say like input type is radio here. I don't know if this actually takes a type or not. What happens if I do this? Well, you could, but maybe don't. And so it works, I think, just because it has a base input underneath. But really, this is just kind of what I would use as like your standard form looking input. And so we can do what we've done before and say const input state, something like that, set input state. We'll use state, and its default state will be an empty string. I will call this input state, and on change, we're going to get this, see what it gives us, add an event. So we're going to say set input state to event dot target dot value. Sweet. So I come in here and I've got this, and so that works properly. So we're updating the state like you would think, like you would expect. But what other properties does this have here? You can say label, and you can say just my input for now. Sweet. So we've got this cool like automatically floating aspect that it's doing for us. And so it's like it's building in the labels and stuff for you. So that's pretty sweet. It automatically like handles the styles of animating it up and down whenever the input is focused or not. Let's add some so I want to just add padding around here. And so some of the other components, they're not all just like inputs and stuff, right? And so some of the more useful components are things, you see they're kind of grouped, like here's all your inputs, here's your data display, you've got like avatars and icons and stuff. Some of the more useful ones are these layout components. So you've got a box. This is just a div effectively that has all of the like what they call styled system properties, which is kind of what we should talk about next. So all of these style function, all the style properties, you can pass directly into these layout components. And so this page here is in the MUI system section. And so all of these are just regular properties that you can just pass onto this component like a regular prop, right? So you don't need to put it in an object in a style or in an SX or anything like that. And so if I wanted to say like give it a flex direction, you could set that here. I could set it flex direction, column, or row. And so let's look at that. So if I want to import a box here, put it at the wrap it and import it. And I wanted to say flex direction. You can set it to a row. And so like this is the same as saying SX equals object flex direction colon row, right? But this is, you know, I think neater and is more reacty than having all of these like big SX objects everywhere. It just passes it as like a static prop with a string. And so generally I prefer to do it this way and not this way if that's available. Like buttons don't take props like this because really only layout components take these. And so for a button, you would need to manually add SX if you wanted to say like change its flex direction or something like that. You would need to manually add SX to it. But with the box, you can just pass in these props. So if I wanted to say like background color, I could say not white, obviously, though it makes sense. Blue. And so now this whole background has a color of blue. And so I don't need to add any styles or anything like that. It's just pass in the prop and the color you want. But again, this takes the specialized values for these. So I could say something like here, I could say success.main. And then now I have the same. So all of these properties, all of these color properties are evaluated based on the theme, which again, we'll talk about more in a minute. And so this button, or this box, sorry, it has the properties margin. So you can set the margin, it's got the property M, so you could, it's just a shorthand of that. So you could just say M is 2. And so you'll see, if I click out here on this box, I've got a margin of 16, not 2, right? And so if I change it to an M of 3, and then now I've got a margin of 24. And so that number is not equal to pixels. That number is a special evaluated value that is determined based on the spacing value set inside of your, again, your theme. A lot of this is built around the theme, but we can kind of build up to that. But basically right now that value is set to 8. And so every time I increase this, it's going to be basically that value times 8. So now I've got 40 pixel margin all the way around the box. And then this is the box right here that has success.main as its background. I could also say this is success.light to change it to be this light green instead of the dark green, or I could say success.dark to be this dark green instead of the light one. So it has options. If you just say success, it will not know what that is because it's neither a valid prop for the color or is it a CSS color. You can pass the regular CSS colors in here though if you just want to say like Robins. All right, we'll try something easier. I don't want to figure all of that stuff. So you can just pass regular CSS colors in here also. So anything that's valid in CSS will be valid in these fields. So that is the box. This is flex direction row. So to show you that that was working, I can show it flex direction column. Oh, also I gave it a flex direction, but the box is not display flex by default. And so I will need to set the, man, I cannot talk today, guys. I will need to set the display property to flex so that that will now become a flex container. And then it will set that value. And so this is typically if I have kind of smaller styles that aren't everywhere, I will just style them like this. Mostly layout things, right? Like if I have a button that I need to be a certain color, hopefully that color is used frequently. And so I would not be using things like this. I would just be following the contained and the color. So if I need it to be an outlined button, I can use it like that. And if I need it to be a grayscale, not grayscale. What's our color properties? Let's see. Where's my, I'm gonna leave that up because I like that page.
Palette? Maybe not.
So these are those values that we were looking at before. So these are all on the palette itself, which is an object. And then that object has, like we were saying, primary.light, primary.main, primary.dark, and then like we were looking at success.light, success.main, success.dark. So like these are the actual values of those colors. Let me see. I think it should tell me if I say color, tell me all of your colors. It's also the API down here. This is also pretty sweet. Is like this is just kind of like their page that shows you how like implementations of things down here in the API section. At the very bottom of all of these pages, they will kind of show you a page for exactly every prop that it takes. Okay, so yeah, here we go. So here's the types that color takes. It takes inherit, primary, secondary, success, error, info, warning, and then a string. I wonder what the string does. Maybe that is the same as saying regular color. Property doesn't like type. So that means that this needs to be, let's say, info. Gotta get rid of the screen, it's ugly. Okay, so now I've got an outlined info button. Yeah, so we can just reference this API page here to see exactly what each of these properties takes. See, it takes like the SX property, the variant that has contained outline. I'm not sure what the string is actually. Maybe it's just saying it needs to be one of these three, and that is of type string. Because I don't know if it actually can take values other than these three. Sweet. So let's talk about one that's pretty commonly used, and that is an icon. So if we look at the docs here for an icon, let's look at this one, but it's not actually what I'm looking for, I don't think. I was kind of talking about it. So these are the SVG icons. You can use like other libraries in like at the same time as you're using material to handle icons and stuff, and material like handle componentizing those for you, I think. But generally this has almost everything I've ever needed, so I didn't really need to look into that a whole lot. But see, like this one, for example, is just at delete. That's like the name of the component itself is the icon name. And so you can import the delete component and just render that, and that will be a component on the page. So if I just say delete, and I think I might need to import another package to use this. Let's see. Yeah, icons material. So I'm going to come to my terminal again, still at the root folder. I'm going to run that command, npm install icons material. Just run my server again while it's going, come back to my code. And then I'm going to try to import delete again. Icons material. And then come back over here, see if it worked. Does it get it? Oh, there it is. Needed to refresh. Sweet. So now I've got this icon. And so that's kind of how they all work. If you wanted a home like they had in their example. Oh, yeah, see, now it's a suggestion now that it's installed. So this is kind of just showing you, you can import every version. So there's like home, outline, rounded, sharp, max and mini, I guess, is referring to the size, and then home repair, I think, is a different one. But so like I say, we get home max outline. I don't even know what that's trying to be. I guess home max is something else. So we'll just say home outlined. And now we get a little outline of the house. And so these are like generally just, throw them around kind of icons. But the cool thing is that this button actually takes a property called start icon, or you can also use end icon. And these take entire components. And so it's not going to be like a string where you just say like the name of the thing. You need to pass it the entire value here. And so if I say, take this home outlined and put that in there. So it's gonna look like that, where it's gonna be start icon equals this JavaScript thing, and then the entire JSX for that icon. And then now I've got this tiny little icon and this huge ugly button. Let me kill this styles here. Okay, so that's kind of what it would look like by default. And then you can do the same with end icon. So I change this to be end icon instead. Then now it's just kind of on the other side. That's kind of just like the default stuff, but this makes just adding icons to buttons super easy. There's also a icon button. That's kind of a special component that you just make it a button and then put an icon inside. So I could put my delete button inside if I wanted. And then now this is a special button that is just that icon. You see it's kind of stretched because we're in this Flex container. But if I make this back into a
So you can't do that with a
row.
regular button?
Like write a button and then just put this icon inside.
Instead of
Like-
instead of click me.
Yeah, you could do that. But here's the difference here is that it just has default styles to basically be like rounded and
Oh,
just
and
kind
then
of
it's-
circular. Yeah, it's like a special type thing where the button generally is kind of square. And I think this is just mostly for accessibility. Like if you're gonna put a icon like in the top right corner to like close a dialogue or something, then now you've got like a nice big clickable round button for it. Most of the time it's going to default to just looking transparent like this. So it just kind of gives you like a range to click on that icon to do an action. But yeah, this does work. You could overwrite the styles on the button to manually do this also. It's just kind of, they give you a diversified thing to help minimize the amount of custom styling you need to write. I'm gonna make this say my button again. Get rid of this thing. Okay, so that is basic components. Like I said, it's kind of hard to just say like, here's all of the components and everything they can do. It's kind of just got to be dig around in the docs and kind of figure out what exactly you want and what exactly you need. I like to kind of go different places online. Like if I'm looking to build out a design, like just look around and see like, hey, I like how they do their buttons or something, and then customize your buttons to look kind of similar to that. But this kind of lets you componentize it. So like after you do it once, you can use it everywhere. And also let you manually adjust the styles easily and in multiple ways. So that is the base components. We talked about the box a little bit. So let's talk about some of the other layout components. One of the more important ones, I think, for you guys is also one that I'm not super strong in, but that is the grid. Because I generally just flex box everything, but grids are pretty important and they're pretty helpful for responsive design. So whenever we make a grid, let's go to documentation for this. What is this? Oh, it's like a beta version of that. Cool. We'll use the stable one for now. So basically the width of the grid is a value of 12, and every item you're going to set what its width value is. And so in this case, you see they'll say like, hey, I want this to be 8, and I want this one to be 4. And so that makes up this full width of the grid. So if the grid width changes, then this one will get smaller and bigger. So it's kind of like saying flex of 2, flex of 1 inside of a flex box. The really cool thing is that when we come down here, and say responsive, you can pass it multiple values. So instead of saying, like here we see, so we've got a grid. This is the container out here. So it's notified by saying grid container, grid item. And so grid items need to live inside of the grid container. It's got a special spacing value. And so that's what's adding this like space. But it's got an object instead of just the number 3. You pass it this whole object. And so this is basically breakpoints, like CSS breakpoints. So whenever you are on an extra small screen, the value will be 2. And whenever you're above that on a medium-sized screen, the value will be 3. And so it automatically is changing based on your screen size. Same with the columns. It says, how many columns do you want? On medium, I've got 12 columns. On small, I've got 8 columns. On extra small, I've got 4 columns. Same thing on, so this is mapping through grid items. But it says here on extra small, I've got 2. On small, I am 4. And on medium, I'm 4. And so if I open this, I should be able to slide it around pretty good. Rows, responsive. Responsive. Extra small is 2. That doesn't really help us, does it? So it says extra small is 4 and says extra small is 2. And so that means that there's 2 side by side, but then medium is also, or small is 4, and then small here is 8, which is still 2 side by side because it's changing the value of the container to not have 12 columns anymore, to just have 8 columns. And so it's still being divided. But once we get to the medium size, it then says that the container is 12 again, and then the value is 4, which then makes it 3 side by side. So that's kind of the responsiveness there. And so let's look at building that inside of our stuff. So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this over, and then I'm not gonna use the array mapping stuff for now. We'll just kill this and kill this. So we've just got this one grid item. We don't need an index because we're not mapping anymore. And then item, we haven't talked about that. I think this is just, what is this? Why do they have item? I don't think this is a, oh, okay. We'll talk about that in a second. For now, we'll just make this a box, which is equivalently a div. And then we'll just put some of those in there. And then instead of, it's kind of weird to do both, like to give this a responsive value and give these responsive values. And you see they have them listed as extra small, small, medium. You can change this to be a size, I believe. Let's see, what's it called? Box sizing, spacing, font size. I don't think it's any of those. Let's see. Grid, fluid grid. Maybe that is how I normally do it. Yeah, like I said, I'm not great with the grids, guys. I normally just flexbox everything. But let's say that this is small. Delete all of these, make those small. And then we'll just get rid of this. So it's going to default to always 12. And so now on extra small screens, I'll have a width of 2, which would mean that I need more of these because that means I can hold 6. Just make a ton of them. And look at our stuff here. Whoa. Where's she going?
Your first item is, you have SI in there. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Thanks. Oh, and I need this stuff back. Nice. Yeah. So now we're doing, we're on medium size or small size, which it's defaulting to the smallest one that is not specified. So like medium, we haven't specified, so it goes down to small, which we have specified as 4. But if I deleted all of these, then it would just automatically say anything extra small is going to be 2. And so now we'll have all of these on all screen sizes. So So this is super helpful for like responsive design, especially for doing. It should change right there. We hit our breakpoint. 3 actually doesn't make sense to make more. I think it should be reversed. Or these will be 4, and then these will be 2. So now for a smaller, we'll have less columns and the smaller space. So that's kind of general grid stuff. And so you can put anything inside of here, anything that you want to wrap and make these values, 1. What we do in our stuff is like we have a form that is, lots of little pieces side by side. But on mobile, we don't want anything side by side because we don't have that much room horizontally. So then we just set extra small is just 12 on every input. And so then like all of these, we can just make them 12. And then instead of boxes, let's just take these text fields and then just put them all in there. Right. And so now I've got a bunch of these. And then if I go to mobile, then it's like now we've got this thing. Text field also has a special prop called full width that basically just is a shortcut of giving it a width of 100%. That I believe. Yeah, there you go. And so now I've got somewhat of a mobile form looking thing, right? One of the other kind of layout ones is a container. So I'm just going to wrap, instead of this, I'm just going to wrap my whole app in container. And so you see it just gave it this padding around the edge so that it kind of looks decent. There's kind of a lot of grid items, so we can just delete like some of them. That many. Feels good now. Okay. And so now we've kind of started to build this, but obviously you wouldn't have 6 inputs side by side. And so let's update the small style to be kind of like, I want a couple here, but I've got one input that's bigger, right? And so let's say small, we want it to be 6, 6, 6, 6, but then this one is going to be a full width one because maybe it's like a full text field. And so we can say text field. Multi-line, that's what I'm looking for. So I'll drop it down. There you go. So you can just say multi-line and then the number of rows. So we'll just copy this, multi-line 4. Where's the one I did that to? Right here. And we'll call this one text area. And if we kind of just look around here, now we've started to build like actual UI that looks a little bit more decent. So I could just move this above. So that makes more sense. Then I'll give this one a 6. So there should be 4. Yeah. And so now it's like I've got my first name, my last name, my email, my phone, and then like say something about yourself, right? And then whenever I collapse it, now they kind of all automatically adjust. So that's kind of the idea of grid. It's just to build out this responsiveness. And so the inputs and all of that stuff don't really need to care exactly about anything outside of themselves. You just put the input there and then the grid handles styling everything. I like that. So let's just delete these other ones. Yeah, so like this is a pretty good use of grid. Let's update these to be, I'm not going to wire them all up to state since we did that last time, but I'll just call this one first name, call this one last name, one email, call this one phone, and I can even give them like type is email so it knows. I don't know if there's a type of phone. I don't know that exists. No. Okay.
They had some special phone thing, I think, the MUI. I don't
Really?
remember what
That's
it was.
cool.
it would like auto put like the parentheses and stuff as you typed it out. I forgot
Mm,
what it was. I don't want to sidetrack you too much, but
sweet. We'll see if we can find that later. Text field. What did I do here? Oh, I skipped one. Oh, I changed my input. Email, phone. Sweet. Okay, so like this is kind of, generally how things would probably be styled so that you can have them responsive on both screen sizes. Awesome. So grid's pretty powerful. It does a lot for you, and I would recommend kind of playing around with it a little bit to kind of help your responsiveness. It takes away a lot of the effort of trying to like figure out exactly where the media queries and stuff like that are and like when things should change. Just put it in the grid and let it handle it for you. Awesome. Okay, and so let's talk about this container also a little bit. So we saw that it gave us padding. If I make my screen a little bigger now, you can see that it's not going all the way across anymore. Now it's just this width here. Give me the nice picker. There we go. And so it's the container automatically has a max width of 1200. And this is also responsive. And so if I go under 1200, it says min width of 1200. So if I go under 1200, then it kills that and you just can go smaller, and then it just results to just the padding. That is all it needs. But whenever you're out here, it gives you this nice margin and this max width. So it just centers it and makes it to be nice and streamlined down the middle. Pretty useful for layout type situations. Sweet. I don't think I want to dig into any more of those because I want to kind of talk about the theming and stuff, because it's kind of like the big thing that helps really reduce the repetitiveness of styling. Okay, so I've got all of these inputs, right? They all are blue, and like my button is blue, and like all of these things. That's because my primary color is blue, so like it's just defaulting all of these to this like bluish color. Actually, I think the button's blue because it's info, but anyways, so let's check out the documentation around creating themes. So if I come all the way to the bottom, go to customization and theming, you'll need a couple things. You'll need to call this create theme function that is passed from material. TypeScript, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that matters for us. And then after you create this theme, it's going to return this theme value here. And then you'll need to pass a theme provider to wrap your application. So anything outside of the theme provider won't have access to the theme unless it's inside of this component. So it needs to be a child. Everything in your app needs to be a child of this theme provider. And this also comes from material. And so we can come over here and we can say up here, it doesn't really need to be inside of the component or not, I don't think. You just say theme equals create theme. We can import that from material. And then let's say palette is primary. It's going to be this, and then we're going to say main. It's going to be, let's get some colors. What is this thing? Material palette generator. I was kind of looking at this earlier. I'm not great with colors, guys, because I'm colorblind, so I just kind of wing it. Sure, so this is going to be our main color, and I guess it's kind of pretty dark to be the main color, but we'll say this will be the main color. And then we'll say this one will be the dark color. Oops. And I need my commas because this is an object, and then the light color will be, I don't know, I don't remember which one I picked, this one. Okay, so now this is my, my primary has been updated with these. Obviously the rest of the palette is still the default material palette. But you could change all of the values one by one if you want. And you go to theme, and then we need to wrap all of this stuff inside of our provider. So we're going to say theme provider. And we'll just get this and bring it down here. I don't want to hit down that many times. And then we'll pass this that theme. Okay, sweet. Let's see if that did anything to our app so far. I don't think it would. I don't know. Is that different? I can't really tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dark blue now. So now we have done all of our colors that relied on whatever it was, primary dot main, will now have already updated. So anything that by default used that will have updated. But now I have also given the access to where now I can access primary dot main and use this color anywhere else in the app. So if I wanted this one text field to be specifically SX equals this, and I could say font color, or I guess it's just color, huh? And I could say primary dot dark, I guess. Which one did I do that to? My input says this one up here. Is it different? Who knows? I don't think so. Does it understand me? Let's talk about this other thing. So not everything can take this all the time. Sometimes it's because is that changed? I don't know necessarily which thing, because there's a lot of components under the hood here because it has this label that moves up and down automatically. So if I'm just saying pass this color to this whole component, and it's not necessarily going to know where to, pass that down to in its component tree, because it's not just one input component, right? They wrote a whole layer of components that are working and just hidden into this. There's oftentimes, let me see, you can say input props, and so like now I'm specifically passing props down to the input below, which will be an object, and then I can also give this an SX, which will be an object, and then I can say color is primary dot dark, and let's see if that works. Let me make it stand out more somehow. Maybe color is not the right thing because it's so hard to see. Do background color. There we go. And so it's using that dark color, and then if I change this to light and main, so you see it's just pulling all of those values from the theme. You also have the option of pulling the entire theme right here. And so, oops, not there. SX actually takes two options, right? You can give it the object like we've seen, or you can write an arrow function and it passes you the entire theme itself. So inside of this arrow function, I'm just going to go ahead and console.log this theme value. And then I'm going to also return, like, I don't know, where am I at in a text field? So we'll just put this thing here, background color, and we'll just set it back to the same thing. But instead of saying primary dot main like we did before, you could actually access it off the theme itself directly. So you could say theme dot palette dot primary dot main, and so like that lets you see like the entire object structure. But you see there's a lot more properties on the theme than just the palette. There's shadows and things like that that already come default. So if I wanted this thing to have a shadow value that is standard across the app, then I could say like set the box shadow to theme dot shadows dot, I don't know, 17. I don't exactly know what that means, but yeah, so you see now it's got the shadow value. And so you can even go in and customize those shadows inside of your create theme. So up here I said palette. I could also add a shadows object and overwrite them. And so that's kind of the idea, is that it comes default. And for a lot of cases, if you're just kind of throwing something up and you just want to build something quickly, it looks good enough to kind of show as like a proof of concept to clients or customers or something like that. But if you wanted to like build your brand and you think these shadows are too harsh or something, or you don't really like the color that they did, you could just overwrite everything you wanted. Or I wanted all of my shadows to be, instead of based on the black color, I want them all to be based on my my main color here. So they're all kind of like bluish. You could like overwrite all of the values of shadows. I don't know exactly what this wants because it looked like it was indexed by numbers. I never actually wrote this out before, not the shadows one. Just a bunch of strings. Okay, so if I give it this, does it know? I don't know what this wants. Anyways, you get it. You can overwrite the shadows. You can overwrite basically any value. But I logged the theme down there, so let's see if we can see what all exists on that. And so this is the entire theme object. And so you see we've got those breakpoints, same keys that we were accessing before: extra small, medium, large, XL. I'm sure you could probably overwrite those if you didn't like using those values. Breakpoints, keys are going to be small, something like that. Does that work? And then down here, let's just try to put small instead of that. Does it get it?
No.
I don't know, guys. I don't mess with the theme a lot. Generally, this is already set up. Sometimes just a developer will work with, calm down, Siri. Generally, a developer will kind of work directly with a designer. They will, if you have the luxury of having a designer, it's pretty nice, because if you're someone like me who doesn't really care a whole lot about building all of the kind of creative branding, that kind of stuff, they'll kind of have most of the input on exactly what everything should look like. After the theme is set up, your job is really to just kind of follow the theme. So it's like, if I need a button, the designer knows what I have access to. They know, like, if they want to use this color, then they just say, hey, I need a main primary button here. And then you just say, okay, make a button with main primary as the thing. Cool. So that was the palette directly. But what if I also wanted to like overwrite? We saw we had like components on there. And so you could overwrite entire components here. And so let's look at the guideline, because I feel like I'm kind of winging it too much. Let's see, creating theme for movie. I don't want movie's own one though. See, they're doing what we're doing: override anything that you want to override and pass it down. Overriding their palette and their primary and their main. They're overriding their secondary also, which is kind of the same. Primary. I wanted to tell me how to customize the components and stuff. Let's see. Custom components, movie. Custom component theme. Let's just let movie tell me what it wants me to do. Okay, so you can define this components object. The name of the component has movie in front of it. And then you can also set like default props, disable ripple, stuff like that. So like the button has, all buttons have by default this nothing because my app is broke right now because of this. And then it didn't like, what was the last thing I changed? I don't remember. I just reset it. Oh, this maybe. I think I reset that back to, yeah, okay.
That disables when you hover that thing.
Yeah, so whenever you click this, there is a property to turn that off if you don't like that. So you could say disable ripple. Oops, ripple. And then now whenever I click it, that won't happen anymore. But I would have to put this on every button I ever wrote, right? And so that's also something that the theme can provide, is that if you wanted to say components, MUI button, and you can say default props, and you can say disable ripple defaults. And so now every button I have in my whole app, well, obviously that didn't work because why?
Disable ripple true.
Oh yeah,
Which one?
disable is the opposite of what I was thinking. Yeah, there you go. Good job. Yeah, so now they're all disabled across the entire app. And so I wouldn't need to specify that. And so this is actually a pretty common use case here as a default prop, because I don't think a lot of people like that MUI ripple. Sweet. And so let's look what else is in the theme and see if there's anything super important in here that I'm not thinking about. Spacing. This is the, see if this spacing here. Yeah, so this is the value that is calculated whenever you're passing in the space props. So if I wanted to say, and here I had this, I think I actually gave it away, but so I've got a box here. Let me put a box below this box just for box. Say color equals primary. Doesn't know what that is, but find out. And then say something in here, and then I'm going to use another one of those styled props, margin top, and say 3. And then I'm going to give it, oh, that's color. I meant background color. I wanted to give it a height so you can actually see it. Height is going to be 200. I don't think it knows what primary is because that's like a variant on the button and stuff. It's not actually a thing. So I need something like primary dot main. Yeah. Sweet. So I've got this margin that's being set on top of this button here. I kind of want to, someone's got too much margin. Okay, yeah. So now I've got this margin on top set. It's set to 3. If I come up here and I change the spacing value to, we have it set to 8 right now. We saw was the default, and so we change it to 4. Then it should shrink. So that is the multiplier. And so if you wanted to, reduce the scale that everything increases, you can overwrite that value. And so whenever I say, where was it? Where's my box? Right here. Margin top is 3. Now it's only 12 instead of 24 that it was before. Margin top is 12 because.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing. It's called spacing, I guess. Does that also work for the actual spacing? Like, does that like instead of margin, adjusting the spacing?
Yeah, so let's look at we showed grid, box, container, and those are the main layout ones. The other one that we haven't looked at yet is actually called stack. And this one's fun. I actually use this most of the time because I use too much Flexbox, but this just has display flex as the default. But the direction is weird because it is it's the opposite of divs. The flex direction on a regular div is row. The stack default is column. And so like right here, I wrote box. Earlier I had column here. If I wanted to just rewrite this without all of these, I could just make this a stack and it would be the same. Because those are the defaults, is display flex and flex direction column. And then this one also, you can just make a stack, because outside of everything else, it automatically is just a box if there's nothing inside of it, right? And so it still has all of the same props that a box has. It still has all the same styled system props. And so you can pass in, like in this case, we're passing in to the stack, the background color, primary main, the margin top, the height, all that kind of stuff automatically gets set. What did you just ask, Alex?
Oh, I was getting spacing confused with padding. I was wondering if the spacing,
Padding.
like it also adjusts the.
Yeah, so let's look at this. So I've got a box. I want to just show you, there is a spacing prop that is actually pretty sweet too. So I'm going to say item 1, 2, 3, oops, 3, and 4. So if I do that and then just give these all height of I don't know, 20, and then we can get rid of this height here, and then do I want to give them kind of a color. DG color is yellow. Sweet. Okay, so we've got these, right? Currently they're all stacked up, so we can't see the value or the primary main. The stack underneath is just being completely contained by these boxes, but it does have this cool spacing prop. And so if I say like 2, then now it automatically puts 2 pixels of spacing between each of them. So it's kind of like a cool, responsive way to just, instead of saying item 2, margin top 2 pixels, item 3, margin top 2 pixels, item 4, margin top 2 pixels, it just automatically says, okay, everything inside of it, space it with this value. It does not look though that it is actually affected by the spacing theme multiplier value though. So I don't know why not. Oh shit, we went way long. Nobody told me. Okay. I know that was a lot and it's really fast, but it's just because there's so damn much and it's kind of hard to really hit what is the individually important parts, because it all is just kind of like learn it as you need it and just kind of get married to the docs, because you can really rely on them. They have really good documentation. And also don't be scared to like come in here like, oh, I need a button and I want it to be like, let's see, complex button, like something like this. Like if you just want that, you can just come here and just copy it all, right? And just start there, start with what they had. This is something really important that we'll talk about Saturday, beginning of Saturday, because we're out of time. So I'll make a note of that. But this is the reason that I never write CSS anymore, is because I just use this. And so this is super important. But we won't worry about that until then. What else is going to cover today? This is just tooltip, explain, handle events. Okay. We will try to squeeze this at the beginning of Saturday as well. This is really, there's not a whole lot going on here. This is just using the dialog, which is this component. And it's just, that's all it is, right? It's just got a state that is just open. And if that value is true, then it shows. And if it's not, then it closes. And so like, here's all the code for that. It's got this dialog component. It's got this open prop that is just set to, well, in this case, a property from some other component above, but it's got a dialog title. It's got a list inside all the, its contents. Oh, and then here's its value. So it's got a state, for the openness. And so you can toggle on and off, handle click open, handle click close, and then it's just rendering that dialogue component that they wrote up there. And that's kind of how they all are, is that it's just, here's the component, you kind of figure out what are the crucial props that you need and how you want it to look, and then go from there. I don't think there's a whole lot more to just talk about it. It's kind of easiest to just play with it and kind of build something that, you know, you like. And I was really impressed by a lot of you guys' creativity last week. And so the homework today is going to kind of build on that spirit. As instructions here, but generally it's kind of open. So you can just choose a topic, anything that you want to make. And the idea is that you're just trying to make something that, you know, you're passionate about, and just build it using material, make it responsive. That's kind of the biggest thing here, is I want you guys to really try to play around with like opening your browser, changing the screen size, and making sure that the components make sense on desktop and on mobile. And then try to mess around with the theme a little bit, like, you know, disable some props or give it some default props, change your default colors, add any kind of palette that you're, you know, if some of you guys are big into colors, you can do a lot with the palette. If you're like me, then you can just kind of leave it as the base palette, and I think that's also fine. But just try to build some stuff out and just really get used to material. I think it's important, and it's hard to know exactly how to teach it. Sorry, this is not the most organized class, but it's kind of the hardest one for me to really like conceptualize, because it all kind of feels straightforward. You import the button and you give it the value in the on change and however you want to make it look. But you got to just play with it and kind of figure out what you need in the moment, really. So that's kind of up for you guys to decide what you want to build. But like last time, if you build something cool and you want to show it off, we can do that Saturday morning when we're in class. Sweet. Any questions on all of that stuff? Awesome. Well, thank you guys. It's been real. I'll see you Saturday.
See you
Yeah.
Saturday, Braden.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
See ya.
Thank you.
Yeah.